wanted to have this evening opportunity to see the exhibition today, and we thought as a special entity to this preview that we would invite one of the artists in the show. And so I'm just going to ask Martha Jackson Jarvis to please come up and share a little bit about herself and her art and her pieces in the show. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, I should say how important and honored I am to be a part of this exhibition curated by Dr. Michelle Wilkinson, and to be a part of this historic event here at the museum. Here to my left is kind of the entry piece for me here. Well, actually not. Outside, there's a piece, the Vortex. And I'm going to start a little bit in terms of some of my background. I was born in Virginia, rural Virginia, kind of in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I have to say that raised by my grandparents, and from that tradition in the 50s, I received an extraordinary window, if you will, into the kind of natural environment and that kind of southern landscape, and then also into a cultural community of people who were makers. My grandfather was a farmer and carpenter, and he grew our food. Whatever we wanted to eat, we'd grow. We wanted water, you'd dig the well, or you'd go to the spring. My grandmother would do quilting. So it was always a part. My mother was a master seamstress. So for me, the vision of making, the possibility of using one's hands, one's mind, and one's spirit to project into materials, I gained that very early on, and I have to say that it traveled with me. My family, part of the great migration to the north, I left the south, but I never let that landscape and those memories leave me in terms of playing in the red clay of Virginia. And you know, in southern Virginia, the red clay is vibrant and red and terracotta that we're seeing here. And in particular, this piece was born from bricks that were handmade by prisoners in North Carolina at the beginning of the century. And these, when they tore down the prison, I had them save the materials, and they were reconstructed into this piece that I call Crossroads. And of course, Crossroads becomes this place of magic, of memory, of opening up possibilities, a place of expanding boundaries. For me, what's important about this exhibition is addressing materials that I speak for myself, that the materials themselves become emblazoned with energy, with meaning, with memory, whether they're very old and ancient materials like stones and clay. And I have to say my base material was always clay, and I think it sort of cycles back into that material in terms of using stone and glass and watching how it began to kind of move from a very primal firing of clay and digging clay to being glass tessera, and seeing how broken elements and these energies could be reincorporated into the pieces themselves. Some of the works inside of the gallery, the umbilicus piece and also the nest stones, what I'm using, again, in terms of the materials themselves as a sculptor, I'm always in the process of collecting, storing materials, sorting materials, and somehow divining from these objects, from these materials, some meaning, finding some poetic way to use them. And what's interesting is that they're very ancient materials and at the same time very contemporary. So there's this incredible balance between what's past and present, and what's ancient and what's futuristic. And I think the notion of process becomes really important. And as I walk through the galleries to experience all of the works, there seems to be this energy that's present in terms of process, that the sense that the human hand has touched almost each piece, each particle. It's almost like these fractals are being reconstructed. And when we think about computer technology and pixels and breaking apart and fractals, that these are all contemporary terms, but at the same time, they're terms of the process or the artist's hands or the artist's vision of how we take a simple object, one simple material, and expand the possibilities of these things. I'm really struck with this notion of being able to garner or gather the energy of these materials from kind of a cosmic process to distilling it down to incorporate a personal history, a personal narrative. And when I experience these works, and I'm speaking these works now, just not my work, because for me, it's been an incredible evolution. I mean, it's one thing to work on work in my studio, and it takes sometimes years to finish a piece, to bring it to fruition, and to start the discourse with Dr. Wilson about the show. And then to have that work come out of the studio and all that it means to get it here, the cranes and the men and the movement and the labor and the energy, the human energy that gets put into all of this. Not to mention the writing and the research and all of the things that's gone into the technology and workings of the museums itself, but how each artist here, I'm really curious that this exhibition opens up for the viewer a window into the artist's process. How do you process all of the stones and all of the brick? I mean, in terms of going to North Carolina for this particular piece and driving up truckloads of brick, bringing it back to the studio, and with a simple little rock hammer, breaking open and exposing the inner core of each one of the bricks and using it to almost sculpt and draw with this material. Or I'm looking at Shakara's, this energy of each little rubber, industrial, each rivet, each screw, each notch becomes a statement, a poetic movement, an energetic mark that speaks to this process that engages technology and ancient materials and, of course, the human spirit. So I think this exhibition is extraordinary and historic in that it sets the course for what we do as artists. You know, you oftentimes work in isolation in the studio. You work in a sequestered environment, or I'm in a rock quarry and collecting tons of stone and taking it back to the studio and sorting in hundreds of bins, each one by size, by color, by texture. And as you travel through the exhibition, you can feel the intimacy of the materials that's being presented to you. And to me, that's extraordinary. And it is, it's very futuristic. So I hope that everyone will enjoy the exhibition. I think it's just a minefield of possibilities. And I think for each of the artists, I'm really quite honored to be in their presence, because you can just close your eyes and pick one artist and there's almost a universe to be explored. And to me, that's extraordinary. And it's pretty dynamic that it is housed here in the Reginald Lewis African American Museum, because I also believe as a contemporary artist, they knitted this incredible tapestry that is not severing contemporary art from historical possibilities. It sets the course of our past, that this is something out of our, clearly out of our lineage, and then it sets the course clearly in front of us, that it's futuristic, and the pathway is open. And that's what happens at the crossroads. You can go forward, and it makes possibilities out of impossibilities. So I thank you.